Hi, we are going to go back to that first set of notes that you guys received today, and we are going to fill in the sections that are on the Neolithic era. And like I told you the other day, we have to do a little bit of jumping around on this set so that we can get things both in a chronological timeline, but also in those separate traits. And that's not going to be typical, but you bear with me and we'll get through it no problem. So we're going to pick up in the Neolithic era exactly where we left off. And we left off at the very top of the second page of your PDF, 8000 BCE, farming begins, agriculture changes the world. The earliest civilizations are going to grow from farming villages to towns to city states to kingdoms to empires, and it's all because of farming. People are going to discover that they can stay in one place, that hunter-gatherer lifestyle that human beings had for 390,000 years is gone, and the idea of Neolithic urbanism, that we are in the new Stone Age, that people could live in an urban setting, is going to dictate how people live from that point on. I think if I remember my figures correctly, 95% of Americans live within 45 miles of a small city or large city. So, I mean, this is really how human life has evolved since agriculture was discovered 10,000 short years ago. So, let's talk about this event. All right. So, this event where farming is invented is going to lead to something called the Neolithic Revolution, the New Stone Age Revolution. It also marks the shift between the two eras that we are talking about, the Paleolithic era and the Neolithic era. So what is the Neolithic Revolution? It's not just the invention of farming. Farming is going to take off really suddenly and very quickly in lots of disconnected places all over the world. This agricultural revolution is going to lead to permanent settlements. People are no longer going to be nomadic. They're going to live in permanent places. It's going to lead to an explosion in innovation and an explosion in technology and a total shift in the meaning of the human existence. Everything about us changes with agriculture, and that Neolithic Revolution is the explosion of everything that came along with the way our lives changed because agriculture had been discovered. Okay? So, what I need you to do is move down to the bottom of your PDF. We're going to leave that timeline for just a few minutes. We're going to move down to the bottom to the chart where it says the Neolithic era. And it says right beside it, what is the nickname of the Neolithic era? It is the New Stone Age. Paleo means old, Neo means new. And it is going to last from 8000 BCE to 3000 BCE. All right. So 5,000 years. As our technology increases, our rate of change and invention is going to grow faster. So look down here at the bottom of this picture. This is a Neolithic home, a new Stone Age home. It is a really nice looking place. You got some couches there with some thick furs, some shelves to store stuff, a nice fireplace in the middle for you and your friends to chill around on the weekends, pretty stone walls. This is a Neolithic home. This is permanent dwelling and a new experience for the human species. It all starts here. Somebody figured out that instead of wandering around looking for wheat, you could take the seeds and plant them and stay in one place and have a predictable supply of food. All of a sudden, you have a predictable supply of food, and it is going to be a roller coaster of change. All right. So imagine that you grow enough food so that you don't have to move during the winter months. So you've got all this extra food. You're going to have to come up with a way to store it. That's an invention. The other hunters and gatherers in your area are going to look at your stored grain and fruits and vegetables and say, That's the best place to hunt and to gather products. So you're going to have to come up with specializations like building walls to keep people out, to protect your property. All of this explodes because somebody figures out that they can plant crops in the ground. So think about what these hunter-gatherers must have thought of these new strange habits. You've got the idea of defensible property. You have the beginning of people using domesticated animals for labor. You've got all of this explosion of new technologies, and it happens very quick, and it happens in lots of areas around the world. So in the box that says Neolithic traits, the number one thing that you need to write down is developed agriculture, because it is the seismic event in this era of human development, and maybe in all of human history. Developed agriculture. Agriculture is farming. I feel like everyone's got to know that. We live in Cumberland County, so developed agriculture. All right. Developed and used advanced tools. It's no longer just something to cut. If you look right here, you start coming up with specialized applications, things to be able to come in and cut the stalks of the wheat that are sharp enough that it doesn't knock down the best seeds. Specialized things to grind for you to be able to make bread. Buckles for harnesses and for yokes. Special plows that can be pulled by animals. Just advanced tools, not just cutting and banging and scraping, but things that have more complex purpose. Nature is permanently altered by our development of agriculture. And this is a big idea, okay? When we start planting fields, we started doing things like diverting water to water our fields for when it is dry and there is no rain. We started plowing up these fields and removing the stones and trees from them, forever changing the landscape, cutting down hills. We started selecting the wheats and grains and fruit that were the biggest to take the seeds from, forever changing the very nature of those natural products. Our grains are much bigger. All wheat is a grass. Now think about what it looks like. That's done through specific selection to alter the products in the world that we live in. And that is an advanced idea. We begin domesticating animals for labor and food. Now, look, there were domesticated animals in the Paleolithic period, but the idea that we're not moving anywhere means that we can select animals and we can keep those animals in corrals so that they can be used for the food they provide, but also for the labor that they provide. So hooking a plow up to oxen, people beginning to ride horses, wild boar that are kept domesticated and become the modern pig. Some of the earliest animals that we actually begin to keep for food were reindeer. So if you look at reindeer were kept and they were used for their meat. Foxes have been hanging out, being fed by humans for 30,000 years. You see where some of these hunter-gatherers had actually recorded the idea that their neighbors had domesticated animals when they are performing their cave paintings in their caves. It was a beginning of the idea of man having some dominion over the natural world and responsibility for the world that's there. Oddly enough, you want to know the first animal that was ever domesticated in the Americas for food? You're going to hate hearing this, but it was this guy, the guinea pig. And I hear that they are very tasty, but I haven't had one, okay? Along with the idea that we are domesticating animals, somebody has to build the fences for those animals to be in. Somebody has to do things like weave baskets and build houses and build walls. Somebody has to patrol those walls with spears to make sure that your extra foodstuffs are not invaded, that your village is not attacked. Those are called specializations. A job that you do that is specialized, that is not farming, that provides you worth in your community so that you still receive the shelter and the food that is necessary to live. That's a specialization. All right. And I mean this truthfully, but, anybody can dig a ditch. Not everyone can be a great brick mason. Not everyone can be a fantastic weaver or make baskets. These are specializations. You need to think about some examples of early specializations. Things like weavers, okay? Things like masons. Masons are people that work with stone and build walls and houses. Carpenters, all right? Truthfully, soldiers start becoming a specialization, okay? And so specialization only began to exist for human beings in this Neolithic era. All right. A huge example of our advancement is to develop weaving, because weaving is allowing us to deal with things that we are raising, whether, it's wool or natural fibers, to be able to provide clothing without hunting. It is really human beings be able to produce everything they need for survival in a closed village. When we are dating Neolithic territories, one of the first things we do to date them is to look at the style of pottery that is being made there. Because when we start seeing fragments of pottery, which is everywhere in Neolithic archaeological sites, we can start to date when farming began there, but also the advancements in their specializations. Pottery was so essential because it allowed us to save surplus. And surplus is a word that you're going to need to know. Surplus just means extra. In this case, I wrote extra food up. It means extra food. But surplus of something is just extra. If you grow all this fruits, vegetables, grains, and you just lay it on the ground, the mice are going to get it. It's going to get wet. It's going to get molded. And so we start having to develop this type of technology. I know it's weird for you to think of pottery as a technology, but it is. This type of technology to store our surplus and our new Neolithic existence. Okay? Now, let's go back up the page to where you see 4000 BCE. I'll wait a second. By the way, you can always pause these videos if you need a minute or you want to go back and hear something. I know that, but have we all got to the top of the page, the top of the second page where it says 4000 BCE? All right. From the Neolithic villages in 8000 BCE to 4000 BCE, we're going to go from villages to towns to cities to city-states. And these will be the first civilizations. All right? The first civilizations where large groups of people are going to live and exist in an area with a shared culture. And those are going to appear in river valleys. Now, I know you've already figured this out, but why do the earliest civilizations appear in river valleys? What's allowing people to live in one place? I'll wait. Yes, farming. And if you're going to farm, you only need a couple things. You need good soil and you need water. Okay. And so the earliest civilizations will grow up around these rivers all over the world, in China, in India, in Mesopotamia, in the Amazon, in South America. There's lots of different river valleys that are going to support independent early civilizations with agriculture. And then roughly 3000 BCE, we're going to leave prehistory. Now you have to think back to the first thing we talked about. Prehistory is all the period of human existence before writing. Roughly at 3000 BCE, more like 3200 BCE, the first written language is developed in Mesopotamia. And Mesopotamia is a little area around the Tigris and Euphrates River, kind of like modern day Iraq in that area. And our next unit will learn all about these early river valley civilizations. All right. And so the first written language was developed in a place in Mesopotamia called Sumer. It's like summer with one M. All right. You don't have to know this today, but the language is called cuneiform or cuneiform, okay, which means wedge-shaped. And so if you look right here, you see all this wedge-shaped writing. And listen, once human beings learned how to write, they wrote down everything. So we know a ton about the beliefs, the culture, the rituals, the personal belongings, the thoughts, the names of their cows of Sumerians, because it was a new technology that only came about because of agriculture, because we had time to sit in a permanent dwelling in safety with our needs, our food supplied for us, fires to light us up so that we could think and create. So don't forget in all this how we learn about these ancient societies before the invention of writing in Sumeria. Okay, we learn about these ancient societies through archaeology, and these are all archaeological sites. Graves being extracted, burial sites, pottery. This thing at the bottom that kind of looks like a beehive is actually a Neolithic city, and all of those round portions were the foundations of dwellings. Archaeology, and they use that radiocarbon dating amongst many other tests to determine age and to study the artifacts that people have left behind. Some of the big places that we study when it comes to the Neolithic world are places like Stonehenge, places that still exist that we can go in and learn about past cultures. So Stonehenge is an incredibly famous archaeological site. Okay, it is located in England, and it was, built roughly about 7,000 years ago during the Neolithic era. People talk about what Stonehenge was, and the truth is, over time, Stonehenge was lots of things. It's used as a calendar. It was used to bury important people in multiple civilizations, and it was used for religious rituals. But it tells us a lot, not only about the people who lived there and used it, but also about their engineering ability, because these are gigantic stones that were moved over miles and placed in very specific places for very specific purposes. There's three cities that really stand out to us from this Neolithic era. These cities are our examples of this Neolithic urbanism that is rising up in this time period. Stonehenge, probably one of the most famous archaeological sites on Earth. This is an artist creation, recreation of what it looked like, when all the stones were up and in place. Okay, beautiful. I can't wait to go there. I've never been there, but I'm gonna get to go there. All right. So let's look at these early cities of the Neolithic era. Now, if you were to go back to your geography assignment from the first day that you saved in your folder under 1.1, and I know you saved it because I've said it over and over, you will see three little red dots on that map. I didn't label them at the time. I didn't want to confuse anybody at the time, but those three red dots will show you the three Neolithic cities that you have to know for this unit. And those three cities are Çatalhöyük, Aleppo, and Jericho. 1, 2, 3. And they are all in this big, beautiful, wide area of land that is called the Fertile Crescent. And it is called the Fertile Crescent because in this area, the flooding that comes out of these rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, which you have already identified on the map, at least where they are regionally, are going to provide Neolithic civilizations in this area the water that they need to grow the food that is necessary to start building kingdoms and civilizations. So we're going to look at these three cities briefly. We only need to know like one thing about them. One of those cities is the city of Jericho. All right. And so Jericho is a super interesting archaeological site. They keep finding the heads of people that were buried in Jericho, and their descendants would pack clay around their skulls and try to remake their faces and keep them on shelves. So it was like pictures of your ancestors, okay? And so when we look at Jericho, what do we need to know about it? It is the oldest walled city. It is the oldest known walled city, okay? I don't know what the other blank was. Don't worry about it. It is the oldest walled city that we know of, all right? And so when we talk about the fact that in Neolithic time periods, they had to build walls to protect their city and their area from invasion, Jericho is the oldest example that we have of that necessary change. All right. Aleppo. All right. Aleppo is the world's oldest continually occupied city, and it is located in the country of Syria. And if you look at these pictures, I mean, you've got these ancient buildings that are located right beside a taxi cab stand. A modern city with high-speed internet and public transportation beside ruins that are thousands and thousands of years old. You know, Aleppo, people have lived in for, 6, 7, 8,000 years in this area, and the city has never gone away. It has been continually occupied by people. Now, Syria, unfortunately, is in an era of civil war. I want to show you one really famous example. This is an 800-year-old mosque that is located in Syria. It is called the Umayyad Mosque. This picture is from 2014. Part of human heritage, and in it you see the mosaic floors, you see the beautiful domed roofs and mosaics, and it's been there for century upon century. This is the Umayyad Mosque today, where it has been destroyed in civil war. When we learn about places in Southwest Asia or the Middle East that are facing all of this warfare and conflict, I want you guys to start thinking about the fact that this is the heritage and the memory of the entire world, because this is where civilization began for us as human beings in this planet. And this cultural heritage and these historical places are suffering during these conflicts. Our last place that we need to talk about is Çatalhöyük. Çatalhöyük is located in Turkey, also an interesting place. And because these places grew up all over, they're very different from one another. In our excavations for Çatalhöyük, we find, a lot of figures. We find a very famous figure, which is called the Venus. Venus figures are found all over from prehistoric places. They look different all the time, but they have something in common. They always are showing the ability to give birth and fertility for the goddesses that these places worshipped, because, it's probably the most magical thing in the human experience. The idea that, that a woman, a mother, can give birth and create life. And so we find these Venus statues and we can learn about their religions and their rituals. This is a recreation. Excuse me, not the Rona. This is a recreation of what a home looked like in Çatalhöyük. And so people would enter in these hatches in the roof, climb down these ladders, and they had these ovens to bake bread, and the ovens were made so that the smoke would go back out through the roof, so that you had this nice area and you would live here under the mat, or live there. You had these nice mats down that you could hang out. What makes Çatalhöyük so fascinating, though, is when your family members would die, you would actually be buried under the floor of the house, and then they would lay the floor back over top of you. And after a while, when the flooring of a house got filled up, you would knock the house down on top of it, and you would build your next house on top of it. There are over 20 layers of the city of Çatalhöyük, and people haven't lived in Çatalhöyük for thousands and thousands of years. So when we discover this in Turkey, we can go down layer by layer by layer, discovering how people lived, what their cultural items are, what their beliefs were, what their burial rituals were, and it's all preserved under layers of the city. This is an artist's recreation of what Çatalhöyük would have looked like, and you see the houses are on levels. People would travel on the rooftops, you know what, and time after time after time, it would be reburied and rebuilt. And it makes it an invaluable asset for us learning about urban life in Neolithic times. Okay? And so, Çatalhöyük is a Neolithic city in modern day Turkey. Now, at that time, there were no Turks. There was no Turkey. It would have been Anatolia, which is a peninsula. When we get to the Byzantines and we learn about the Islamic empires and things, you'll know exactly where it's at. But for right now, the Anatolian Peninsula, modern country of Turkey. And its preservation informs us about New Stone Age rituals, beliefs, and culture. Please remember that New Stone Age is just a nickname for that Neolithic era, and this is Çatalhöyük. Okay. Then, at the end of that Neolithic era, the first civilizations appeared. And they appear in what type of valleys? I've said it. Do you know it? They appear in river valleys where there is access to water and good soil, and in a lot of cases of these physical barriers that will protect them. Deserts or mountains or vast expanses of land that give these early river valley civilizations time to thrive and time to grow. And our next unit is early river valley civilizations. This is the end of our look at prehistory, archaeology, human evolution, Paleolithic traits in life, Neolithic traits in life. Make sure that you work a little bit on remembering these cities. You only have to know one thing about each of them, okay? And appreciate your time. You know I'm always here for questions. If you need anything, feel free to contact me. Feel free to email me, call me, text me, whatever you need. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and make sure you're checking your assignment list, that you're saving all of these notes, but that you are also sharing them with me so you're receiving your participation grades. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see you next time.